Happy Easter. This morning I'm talking about the reappearance of the Christ from the esoteric tradition. The Bhagavad Gita tells us whenever there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides, it is then I manifest myself. For the salvation of the righteousness and the destruction of such as do evil, for the firm establishing of the law, I come to birth, age after age. And that is from the Bhagavad Gita. It goes on to say, whenever men become indifferent toward their duties and responsibilities, and whenever unrighteousness and disorder increase, then indeed I manifest myself. To protect the virtuous, to destroy the wicked, and to reestablish the sense of duty and responsibility, thus, says the Bhagavad Gita, I manifest myself, age after age. These three sacred readings, when compared to the times that we are in, the uprisings around the world, the lawlessness going on in the world, terrorism, disease, hunger, poverty, unlawfulness, and lies, our hope for the future lies in the great avatar, in the Christ telling us that when these things are prevalent upon the planet Earth, then I will manifest myself. These quotations are from the sacred book called the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata, an epic poem handed down orally from generation to generation. As we listen to these quotes, they almost sound as if they could be found in the Holy Bible. However, when we read sacred truth, the truth of God, it will be found written in all the sacred religious texts from around the world, from the beginning of time. Whether it be the Holy Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, or in the writings of ancient cultures, we will see the reoccurrence of such truths in different languages, in different religions and faiths. But despite the differences, these differences, the words will ring true to all seekers of truth. As we celebrate Easter today, we must remember that the religious world is waiting for the return of their spiritual leader. Now I want to step aside of these notes for a minute because I'd like you to think about this, because I was thinking about it as I put the talk together and even driving over here this morning, which is a great time to think, as long as I'm focused on driving too. You know, we've been reading in the teachings, some of us for a few years, some of us for many years, about the reappearance of the Christ. And certainly, if there was ever a time for this reappearance to take place, now would be the time. But I imagine others have thought the same thing. Back in the early 1900s, they thought the same thing. So, how do we not lose faith that this great avatar will reappear? How do we not lose faith in that idea? I think two ways. The first is to be intuitive. This is not a gut feeling. This is not lower solar plexus meanderings. It is not pretending that you're psychic or whatever. This is true Buddhic consciousness. When you have true Buddhic consciousness, your consciousness functions in what we call the spiritual triad. Maybe not all the time. And it's not likely that your consciousness is going to be functioning in the spiritual triad or within the sphere of the Buddhic plane at all times. But it is important that we have contact, because in this contact, we create a substance that eventually becomes absorbed into and realized in our heart. When we have the substance of this pure spiritual energy in our heart, the first thing we begin to express in our day-to-day life is the Christ consciousness. So, as we build this Buddhic consciousness and it becomes absorbed into the nature of the heart, then we can recognize the Christ consciousness in those that carry it with them. This is very different from what the Master Moria says about corpses walking on the planet. There are many, 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 many corpses walking on this planet. The walking dead, is how we understand it. The walking dead are people who live in a critical mind. I've seen this over many, many years of my experiences, where students will come to a conference, let's say, and a great teacher is lecturing, and then engages later in personal conversations with those of us that attend. Some people walk out. Some people criticize a great one. Some people are fearful. Other people in their criticism belittle a great light. These are walking corpses. These are the living dead. The one that criticizes greatness, the one that reacts to rays of light and tries to upset the balance of light and love and power. So, as esoteric students, those of us who believe in the reappearance of the Christ, it is my belief system that yes, at some point there will be a physical entity manifest itself, maybe not even physically, maybe just in the intuitional plane, maybe just in the higher mind plane of consciousness, or perhaps physically. But we want to be able to recognize, first of all, in one another, those who have Christ consciousness. And in that recognition, in that realization, to support them. We're not looking at their personality life, we're not looking at their religious life, we're not looking at their relationship life. We're penetrating through all of that worldly chaos, perhaps, or distraction, and we're going right to the light or the Christ consciousness of that person. And the only way I believe that we can recognize such individuals is through our own Buddhic consciousness. Okay, so as I get back into the talk, you'll hear more about what we can anticipate and how. But what I'm saying now are not in my notes. They're strictly from inspiration and should be paid attention to. If you do not pay attention to this idea, this approach, and you're looking for a physical being to come to the planet, you may become disappointed. Why? Because your filter system is looking for your imaginative picture of what you think a Christ should be. And so many people walk by these great lighted beings with a critical mind, with a clogged filter system. So that great light can be standing right in front of you, and all your clogged filter can see is yourself. See the dysfunction in your personality, and because that dysfunction is so strong, you've missed a terrific opportunity, to be bathed in the light of the presence of a compassionate one. So don't depend on somebody else to tell you who that Christ consciousness individual is. Recognize it because of your own light. So let me repeat this last sentence in my notes. As we celebrate Easter today, we must remember that the religious world is waiting for the return of their spiritual leader. In all major religions, someone is expected, and his coming is anticipated. Always in the past, it has been the religious teachers of the period who have fostered and proclaimed this expectancy. And the time has always been one of chaos and difficulty, of a climaxing point at the close of a civilization or culture. This is why esotericists are now belaboring on the phrase, building the new civilization. But I will tell you, you cannot build a new civilization on old premises, on power itself. You cannot build a new civilization without compassion, without love, without being awake. You must be awake. And many people today who are saying and claiming that they are world teachers, that they are world disciples, that they are all-knowing, are not awake. It is their concrete mind, their superiority, their egotism, that is talking. Those who are going to build the new civilization, you're going to recognize them. They're not claims makers. They are so busy doing the work. They are ones of humility, ones whose hearts are filled with peace, one whose nature is not competitive, who is not trying to polarize the world to their religion, their faith, their group, their this and that. Those are the ones that are going to be building the new civilization. And we want to be part of that construction. Bringing the teaching, the hierarchical teaching, into that new civilization. This is what I believe Nicholas and Helena Rourke were trying to do. This is what I believe that Alice Bailey was trying to do. This is what I believe Torkim Saradarian is still trying to do. So when you hear people talk about the new civilization and that they're building the new civilization, look at their life. Do you feel joy when you are with them? Do you feel inspired by what they represent, by their accomplishments, by their humility, by being hard workers? If so, these are the people you want to align with. As spiritual individuals, you being the spiritual individual, you want to align with these people so that your legacy is permeated in the foundation of building a true new civilization. The coming of the Avatar, the advent of a coming one, and in terms of today, the reappearance of the Christ are the keynotes of the prevalent expectancy. When the times are right, the invocation of the masses is strident enough, and the faith of those who know is keen enough, then always he has come. And today will be no exception to this ancient rule or this universal law. We look at what just happened in Brussels. Because of the internet, because of worldwide media coverage, the world is up in arms. We're no longer going to stand and allow a polarized group of terrorists control this world. And so if you look at the positive side, such terrorism is polarizing the good people and is going to create a movement that the terrorists, and I don't want to even name them, will be desecrated, because good always, always, always wins over the bad, over darkness. So for decades, the reappearance of the Christ, the Avatar, has been anticipated by the faithful in both hemispheres. But see, I'm never going to get through this talk. So we're going to go over this morning. See, this sounds so complacent when we talk about the faithful, that they're still in the caves in the Himalayas meditating, or they're in their little groups, in lotus positions and meditating. And are these who constitute the faithful? Not in my mind, not in the Aquarian age. Those who constitute the faithful are those who have the compassionate heart, those who are warriors, those who are fearless, those who are not daunted by the walking corpses of the planet. The walking dead. We're not daunted by such darkness. See, what happens when we talk about the walking corpse? A walking corpse is used by the forces of darkness. They have like an antenna that the Dark Lodge, which, contrary to what some people are saying, that there is no longer a Dark Lodge, is stupid. There is a Dark Lodge. If there were no Dark Lodge, there would be no walking corpses on this planet. There would be no terrorism on this planet. So what happens with these walking corpses? They have an antenna, which is a magnet that sends out a radar or an announcement to the Dark Lodge, here I am, use me. much in the same way, surprisingly enough, that beings of light have an antenna that tell the hierarchy, I am ready for your fire. Use me as an instrument to manifest the new civilization. So, when I say walking corpses, these are entities that are alive, that look like you and me. Maybe not a bright green jacket, but they just look like a normal human being, but they don't act like a normal human being. They create fear in you. They create irritation in you. They belittle you. They put you down. It goes on and on and on. So the faithful, let's take the term the faithful and translate it as the spiritual warriors. The avatar has been anticipated by spiritual warriors in both hemispheres. Christ comes forth for two reasons. We can think the Christ consciousness here. Okay? The army of the hierarchy of which we want to be. Those who have Christ consciousness. But the teaching tells it in this way. The Christ comes forth for two reasons. One, the deep and unknown cause prompts him to do so. And two is the demand or the invocation of humanity itself. The return of the Christ is consequently a spiritual event coming to us to bring about great changes or major restorations, to inaugurate a new civilization, or to restore the ancient landmarks and lead mankind nearer to the divine. This is so exciting when you think about restoring the ancient landmarks. What does this mean to you? Think about it. I absolutely don't have time to share it this morning, but think about it because it is exciting and it's wonderful. And it's bringing back to our hearts what we know to be true. They have been defined as extraordinary men and women who from time to time appear to change the face of the world and inaugurate a new era in the destinies of humanity. The teacher of angels and men will come, we are told, in times of crises. All great ones, avatars, when they return to humanity and the planet, will create situations in order to bring an end to the old. Not only an end to the old, but the undesirable, and make way for new and more suitable forms of the evolving life of God eminent in nature. Great ones, the greater and lesser avatars come when evil is rampant. For this reason, if for no other, an avatar may be looked for today. The necessary stage is set for the reappearance of the Christ, the greatest of all avatars, the master of all masters, and the teacher of light alike of angels and men. Avatars are very advanced souls that come cyclically to the planet or to the solar system to lead humanity and all life within the solar system. Now, I want to tell you, if you are an enlightened being, if you function consciously, periodically, or even momentarily in the substance of the Buddhic plane, you are going to be part of the consciousness of that avatar. Do you get it? So it's not like us that we're going to be sitting back, waiting for this great avatar to come and be uninvolved. We have to be involved in the consciousness of these great avatars. When this happens, the avatars and those whose consciousness is part of these great ones will bring in a great vision, a vision of harmony, a vision with the purpose of life. And many of us believe that such a time is imminent. Now, even in the New Testament, the first chapter of the Acts of the Apostle, also known as the Acts, describe Christ's ascension and reappearance in this way. A cloud received him out of their sight. As the disciples were looking up, 2 angels appeared and told them that the same Jesus, taken up from you into the heaven, shall come again in the same way as you have seen him go. In the book Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, it reads, "The task is, through meditation, to establish the knowledge of and the functioning of those laws and principles which will prevail in the coming era, the new civilization and the future world culture. Until the foundation is at least laid, the Christ cannot reappear. If he came without this due preparation, much time, effort, and spiritual energy would be lost. So we must assume that there must be organized in our future a group of men and women in every country who, under due and proper organization, will simultaneously and unanimously meditate upon those measures and basic laws upon which the rule of Christ will be founded. When we say meditate, again, it is not sitting in a lotus position. It is not retreating to the caves of the Himalaya. You wouldn't want to anyway. They're stinky. It's scary to be in these caves. Let me tell you, I was there. Lasted a minute. It's terrible. It's exciting, it's thrilling to the intellectual mind and the emotional nature. But once you're in there, as I was, I realized, nothing's going to happen in this dank cave. So the idea, when the teachings say simultaneously and unanimously meditate upon those measures and basic laws upon which the rule of Christ will be founded, means this is our alignment. See, we already know what these rules and basic laws are. We're living them. To live them, it means that we are practitioners of meditation. So what are those laws and commandments? Where we don't know exactly what those basic rules will be, the teaching has given us preparatory information to live our life in such a way that as souls, we will be ready for the reappearance. The first is from Mark chapter 12. Christ commanded, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your power. This is the first commandment. It says nothing about the walking corpses on this planet. It says nothing about loving in order to be loved back. I could just go on and on. The second is likened to it, where it says, you must love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than this, but there is, because life evolves. And now we are told that this second ancient commandment has been advanced to this: love your neighbor more than yourself. It means love your husband more than yourself. Love your friend more than yourself. Love your group more than your family, and so forth. How many of us can do this? Very few. But we can try. The Dalai Lama said in an interview of Americans, you can travel all over the world, but not yet cross the street to meet your neighbors. Daily, this is number 2, pray and meditate. Daily strive to contact the Spirit of the Christ. The meditation we experienced here this morning is the most beautiful meditation to engage in weekly or monthly. Each day pray and ask Christ to guide your hands and feet in the directions where you can best serve in His name, in the name of hierarchy, in the name of the kingdom of God. Number 3, Mother of the World. The teaching reminds us about the dual origin of the cosmos. The Master M said, cosmos exists in the greatness of dual origin. The dual origin is the masculine and feminine principle. The feminine principle has been called by many names: the Mother of the Universe, the World Mother, and Sophia. In the esoteric Christian tradition, she is known as the Holy Spirit, one of the divine triad. The ageless wisdom tells us that the Mother of the World is the spiritual mother of every child on earth whose heart is attuned to hers. That she is the initiator of the planetary hierarchy, the spiritual mother of all the Christs and Buddhas of human history. The teaching tells us woman must affirm herself, and that is why the sword of spirit is given precisely into the hands of woman. In the East, this epoch is noted as the epoch of Maitreya, the epoch of great compassion, and the epoch of the Mother of the World. So as we align our heart with the heart of the cosmic Christ, we must also align our heart to the feminine principle. And women need to hear this more than men these days. Once we align ourselves with the Mother of the World, then we can say, let there be light, let there be love. Virtues, this is number 4. Each day or each week, select one virtue you feel you are weak in and the need to strengthen through practice and development. Remember, virtues are made of the nature of the soul, not of the mind, the nature of the soul. As you practice a virtue, it puts you in contact with the treasures of your chalice. To develop a virtue means to associate yourself with the cosmic entity, who is the source and embodiment of that virtue, such as harmlessness, right speech, selflessness, stability, humility, temperance, joy, even contentment is a virtue. I had some other points, but I think that's enough. For now. Okay, let me end with this. Let me close with this. About a purified heart. As we undergo purification of the heart, we will soon live a life that understands beyond the limitation of time. Imagine that. That understands beyond the limitations of time, beyond evil thoughts, evil plans, hatred, and separatism. It is through a purified heart we will recognize the radiant energy of the Mother of the World and the Christ upon their reappearance on the planet. How can we purify our hearts? Overcome selfishness, Clean your vanities. Renounce your ego. Do not try to control the lives of others. And try to see beauty in everyone. The time of Easter is a time of resurrection of the Christ principle in our heart.